Hi witches, thank you so much for joining me today. And today I wanted to just share with you 5 tips for witches who are in the broom closet, or witches who cannot openly practice, which if you guys don't know, I had a lot of experience with. I might be this kind of outwardly witchy person, you know, in the modern day, but for a lot of my practice, I had to keep things under wraps for like my own safety. So if that sounds like you relate to that, if you are in a place, you know, where you are unsafe to practice witchcraft, I just want to implore you before like watching the rest of this video, your safety is my first priority. And I want you to know that at any point in your life, you can always come back to this path and practice, right? Especially if you are under the age of 18 and you're watching this, because I like can't necessarily control all of that. You know, I just want to say, please stay safe, and that there is no religion, no spiritual belief out there that, you know, you should be putting your life on the line for, or like no one should be asking you to do that anyways. Like no one should be like, oh, well, you know, in order to be a real witch, you have to do this and blah, 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 blah. No, I'm gonna cut myself off from ranting about those types of people and like that specific situation, because that could be a whole other video about me being like, eh. But the number one thing that I really want to impress upon witches who are maybe not able to openly practice or show off their witchiness is that I hope you can recognize how sacred of a time in your practice that this is. It is really, like, especially when I was growing up, I feel like I kept it under wraps for the first like 4 to 5 years of practice. And that was really the only time in which I was like relatively uninfluenced by the practitioners around me. I wasn't exactly exchanging tons of ideas, especially not to the level that I was today. This was also like 13 years ago, so it was a little bit of a different climate, a little bit like less I don't know, I wasn't able to go to Target and find spell books and stuff, so it was definitely less popular. However, there is an opportunity to enter this space with fresh eyes, with wonder, and to create traditions for yourself, which is something that I don't know that I appreciated back then, because I just wanted to be my witchy self and just be like, hello, yes, I am a practitioner. And now that I can do that, I am very grateful. However, sometimes I feel like now that I profess to be a certain type of way, I kind of have to live up to it a little bit, which is a little bit stressful. So, you know, when you are unable to openly practice or profess that you are a witch, just know that there is kind of a quiet power to that. There's some mystery to that, right? And this is something that is beautiful, sacred, and personal to you. So hopefully you can treat this time in your practice as such, because one day you won't have to worry about it, and then you'll be like, oh, okay, I don't know what this was all about. I don't know what I was freaking out about. It's all good. I'm still as much of a witch as I was back then. In the same vein of that, number 2 is to stop comparing yourself to other people. And maybe that is just a general life tip. I stopped comparing, well, that's actually not true. I do compare myself to people, but not so much in terms of like my spiritual beliefs, just in terms of like success and stuff. But anyways, that's therapy. Now my practice, I just want to like put out there, does not look like what it looks like on the internet all the time. Like sometimes there are days where it is not beautiful. It is not aesthetically pleasing. It is very, very simple, because that is all I can manage. And that's okay. So if you are sitting here and you're just like, oh my gosh, like I wish I had all the crystals. I wish I had all the books. I wish I had an altar. Don't do that. I feel like that is just stressing people out unnecessarily. And just know that, again, you have time to build those things. It took me a very long time to amass the amount of items that I have for my practice. And that is with me focusing on doing this for a while. So if you are just getting into this, if you are still in a space where you're like, oh, I can't like openly have an altar, there are alternatives. Haha, altar alternatives? That sounds like a video I should make. But I really want to impress upon people that like your practice is your own, and that's why it's beautiful, you know? So it doesn't have to look like my practice. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It's your own, and that's awesome. Number 3 is maybe some cheeky advice, something I wish someone had told me when I was a rebellious little teenager. But as fun as it might be to start debates with people, with family members, with like kind of like standoffish people maybe, just know when it's time to ease up, and remember that other people have beliefs that need to be respected too. This is definitely something that like I was like really outspoken about like how much I hated Christianity and like how all Christians are evil, and like I definitely, that was my unhealed self. That was me dealing with like trauma related to the church. And that is valid if that's where you are. Like, your rage is sacred, and I want to validate, you're allowed to be angry, not a big deal. But I definitely feel like I damaged some of the relationships that I had around that time. I wish I was able to articulate, the way I felt about things a little bit better. Again, I was a child, so like, maybe this is like just not a thing that adults have to deal with. But I really just like, I feel like because I was so standoffish, because I was just so like, F you, like I don't care about Sky Daddy, like all of that kind of stuff. Like, while there is definitely like, I will match energy if someone's coming at me like that, I think that it definitely blocked me from having conversations with Christians that could have been healing or helpful to me, at least to like gain some perspective or to maybe like find common ground and understanding. And I feel like I might have like, I worry now, like I misrepresented this spirituality because of how like aggressive I was. And I think, again, it's just like, I was just really into it and very excited, but I hope that, you guys can learn from my mistakes a little bit in that, and just like know when it's time to be like, all right, you know what? You have your beliefs, I have mine, agree to disagree. Like, as long as it's not hurting us, there are definitely, I feel like, some instances in which that is finding that common ground is possible. So, yeah, I don't even know if that's good advice, but it's just something I wish someone had told me. Now, number 4, if you are a student, and this is something I was thinking about the other day because I graduated a couple years ago, and I lost access to so many databases that I like took for granted for the first 12 years of school and then like college. So if you're a student, you have so many resources available to you. And I really encourage you to consider how each subject that you're studying can really apply to your practice without like calling attention to yourself, right? So how can chemistry help you with like herbalism? How about botany or biology? Learning about nature and the ecosystem, right? What about geometry, shapes, and sacred geometry, or astronomy? How can that help you learn about astrology in your spiritual practice? History, oftentimes we get to learn about, ancient people, ancient civilizations, mythology that goes along with them. How can you turn a research project into something that you can put in your grimoire? Literature oftentimes also talks about mythology, deities, and really gives a good insight into a lot of like the way that ancient cultures interacted and stuff. So, and not even ancient cultures, some like medieval or even Renaissance era, up until like even the Victorian occult studies. Tons and tons of literature out there for you to read. Plus, this is a really excellent way to practice your researching skills, and you have so many resources available to you. Please don't waste them. Please know that I'm so jealous. If you have a JSTOR account, just know I'm jealous of you. Okay, now finally, because I feel like those first 4 kind of pieces of advice were like a little bit mercurial, I wanted to give you like a very definitive place to start if you're like, I don't even know how to hide this. Now, the number one thing that I did, especially like the first years of my practice, other than just like being a sneaky sneak, which like don't do that. The first thing that I really did, and the thing that I have been consistently doing since the beginning of my practice, is simply honoring the seasons. We have the summer solstice coming up, and a lot of the time, most people, even if they are super religious or just like very secular even, they will just not bat an eye for whatever reason when you're like, oh yeah, it's the summer solstice. I just thought I would go out and take a hike. Or like, oh yeah, it's the fall equinox, same sort of deal. I don't know why people don't think that that's like the weirdest thing ever. I guess it's just like a normal sort of like thing to like honor, or because it's like secular or like tied to science, there's less of this like, oh, why are you celebrating the summer solstice? Is it because you're in league with the devil? Like no one thinks that. So I encourage you, to really start by honoring those seasons and connecting with the elements therein. So hopefully that gave you guys a little bit of advice. I think it was mostly me rambling at you about the beginning of my practice, so apologies if that is not what you were looking for. But if you have any like questions, I guess, if you are in the broom closet yourself, if you're not able to openly practice and you have questions about like specific things, I'm definitely down to do a part 2. Yeah, so let me know down below and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.